wonder something, and I've been sitting with it for a few days now. I wonder why certain combinations of words, arrangements that take less than a second to say, can reach places inside you that years of deliberate effort couldn't quite get to. I'm not being rhetorical. I'm genuinely sitting with that. Because the answer, as far as I can tell, has less to do with the words themselves and more to do with the stance they create in the mind when you say them. And Jung, who spent 40 years trying to understand how the unconscious speaks, and more importantly, how the conscious mind can learn to hear it, had something precise to say about this. But before I get there, I want to stay with what most people try first. The popular version of this, the version that fills journals and wellness accounts, gives you affirmations. I'm confident. I'm enough. I'm at peace. And for a certain kind of person, in a certain kind of moment, those can work. The mind hears the declaration and accepts it. Something settles. But for a particular kind of person, the one who notices everything, who feels deeply, whose nervous system doesn't take information at face value but turns it over and tests its edges, affirmations often hit a wall. You say the words, and something inside you responds immediately. That's not true. You know it isn't. And suddenly, you're not doing affirmations anymore. You're having an argument with yourself about whether you're allowed to believe the thing you just said. The wall has a name. It's the ego's relationship with what it knows to be true, and you can't command your way past it. Jung understood this better than almost anyone. In the 8th volume of his collected works, The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, he described something he called the transcendent function. The name sounds more mystical than it is. What it means is this. There's a capacity in the psyche to hold both what you consciously want and what the unconscious is trying to bring forward, and find a third position that neither could reach alone. A new relationship between the two. To access it, the ego has to do something it finds genuinely difficult. Stop directing and start listening. This is the core problem. And it's worth saying clearly. The unconscious, Jung's term for everything in the psyche that hasn't been fully integrated into conscious awareness, doesn't respond to commands. He noticed this across decades of clinical work. The patients who tried hardest to force change, to instruct their minds into different configurations, often got the least movement. The patients who learned to become curious about what was underneath, who approached the interior with something closer to a genuine question than an agenda, those were the ones who shifted. Not because curiosity is more virtuous than willpower, because of how the psyche is actually organized. A command moves from the ego outward. It's the conscious self trying to override, suppress, or redirect the unconscious material. And the unconscious, structurally, pushes back. What you resist tends to persist. What you interrogate with genuine openness tends to move. This is where active imagination starts, not with a statement, with a question. Here's what that sounds like in practice. Instead of telling yourself you're anxious, try asking, I wonder what this anxiety is trying to protect me from. Instead of telling yourself you can't stop thinking about something, try, I wonder what I'm actually afraid to decide. Instead of telling yourself you failed, try, I wonder what I needed from that situation that I didn't get. 2 words, I wonder. That's the whole shift. What those 2 words do, at the level of language and the psyche simultaneously, is create a small gap between you and whatever you're experiencing. They move you from identified to curious, from inside the experience to slightly outside it. Not distant, not disconnected, but in the position Jung described as the observing ego, the part of you that can look at the complex rather than being entirely absorbed by it. Psychologists studying what they call linguistic distancing, the relationship between the words you use and your ability to regulate emotion, have found something that confirms this from a different direction. When people shift from embodied first-person statements to more curious, slightly removed framings, their emotional reactivity decreases. A study published in 2024 examining this pattern across multiple languages, found that this linguistic shift activates a different cognitive architecture, not one that suppresses the feeling, one that can actually work with it. The shift isn't away from the emotion. It's from being inside the storm to being able to see the storm. Same weather, different position. I found this on my own, the hard way, without knowing what I was doing. After I left the hospice, there were mornings, months of mornings, when I'd wake up with a specific kind of dread, not attached to anything I could name, just heavy, undirected, insistent, the kind that settles in before you've even fully opened your eyes, like it was already there waiting for you. My instinct, the one I'd spent years training in grief counseling, was to interrogate it. What are you afraid of? What is this actually about? Why can't you let this go? I'd push, it would push back. By mid-morning, I'd have a headache, and the dread would still be sitting exactly where I'd found it. One morning, I caught myself doing something different. I'm not sure what shifted first, but instead of going at the feeling directly, I asked it something. I wonder what you're here for. Quiet. No particular expectation, just the actual question. And something loosened. Not the dread itself. Something in my relationship to it. Like a hand that had been gripping something tight and finally for a moment stopped. The feeling was still there, but I was no longer entirely inside it. There was a small amount of space, just enough to breathe differently. Jung did something like this at a scale I find almost difficult to hold in my mind. In 1913, when his professional relationship with Freud was ending and his interior world was fragmenting into visions he couldn't categorize and couldn't dismiss, he didn't try to command his unconscious into silence. He didn't use willpower or logic to override what was happening. He started a conversation. What are you? What do you want? What are you trying to show me? That became the Red Book. 16 years of dialogue. Genuine, uncomfortable, often frightening dialogue between the conscious man and everything inside him that he couldn't fully explain. Not fighting, wondering. What he found, and what organized the rest of his thinking, was that the unconscious isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to complete something. It carries material that the conscious mind, in its ordinary functioning, doesn't have room for. And it can only offer that material when the conscious mind creates the conditions for it. Those conditions aren't effort. They're not discipline. They're not a better set of instructions to yourself. They're the genuine stance of, I don't know yet, I'm listening. 2 words that create that stance. I wonder. Not a trick. Not a formula to perform every morning. A real orientation. One you can drop into for 10 seconds when you're in the middle of something and the usual approaches aren't working. When you're stuck in a thought loop that won't resolve. When you're feeling something you can't name. When you keep arriving at the same dead end. I wonder what this is really about. That question has never once failed to create a small opening. The answer doesn't always come immediately. Sometimes it comes later, while you're making coffee or driving somewhere. Sometimes it arrives days later, as a dream or a passing thought you almost miss. But the opening, the small gap between you and the experience, that one tends to arrive within seconds of actually meaning the question. Try it with something right now. Something you've been pushing against, something that keeps cycling without resolution. Don't reach for an answer. Just ask, quietly and without expectation. I wonder what this is really about. Then stay there. Not long. Just long enough to mean it. That's where the psyche moves.